Ladies and gentlemen, take a deep breath, and just for a moment pause. Have you felt it lately, that quiet tension in the air, that uneasiness in your chest that something in our world is shifting? Like we're all watching the same fire, but nobody's reaching for water. Today, I'm not here to just talk about politics. I'm not here to pick sides. I'm here because we need to wake up. Something happened. Something that shook the earth and pierced the sky. Israel launched an attack on Iran. Now, before your mind runs to opinions, fear, or outrage, I want to ask you one thing. Where is the world going? We scroll, we share, we argue online. But deep down, there's a much bigger question we're all too afraid to ask. What kind of world are we building? This isn't just about borders. This is about values, humanity, faith, and our future. We are standing in a time where silence is dangerous and awareness is power. So stay with me, not just to listen, but to reflect, to understand, and to rise above fear, because the world won't heal from war unless its people choose a different path. When we witness a conflict like the attack of Israel on Iran, our first instinct is often to analyze the visible: missiles, politics, defense strategies, retaliation. But what if all of this is just the smoke, and the real fire is burning underneath? Conflict is never random. It doesn't just erupt, it brews silently and slowly inside minds, ideologies, cultures, and wounds that have never healed. This is why conflict is not the root, it's the symptom. What we're really seeing is the manifestation of deeper moral fractures in humanity's core. Our world is advancing in technology, in science, in innovation, but morally, spiritually, emotionally, we are limping. The very systems that were designed to connect us, to inform us, to liberate us, have also become tools to divide, distract, and desensitize us. We can pinpoint the day and time a missile strikes, yet we fail to identify the exact moment compassion dies in a leader's heart. We know the weight of nuclear warheads, but we don't weigh the emotional cost of raising children in fear, teaching them that survival matters more than peace, and that dominance equals strength. These are the internal wars that birth the external ones. Every missile launched, every city targeted, every life lost is the echo of something much older, a belief system that says my truth must destroy yours, a system that feeds on fear, power, revenge. It's not just governments at war, it's mindsets, it's egos, it's generations of unresolved pain passed down, justified, glorified. We've been conditioned to look at global conflicts as battles between countries. But if we zoom out, what we really see is a crisis of conscience. What values do we stand on? What kind of legacy are we defending when we resort to destruction as our first language? And this crisis isn't just happening on world stages. It's mirrored in our personal lives too. Families are torn by pride, communities are divided by opinion, relationships are ended over differences. What's happening between Israel and Iran is a magnified version of the same unresolved turmoil we see in homes, in neighborhoods, in hearts. That's why this isn't just their war, it's a reflection of all of us. The world mirrors what we allow within ourselves. Think about how easy it's become to justify pain if it's wrapped in the cloth of justice. How quickly we dehumanize others when we're afraid. How often we believe that being right gives us permission to be cruel. That mindset, multiplied across millions of people and amplified through politics, religion, history, that's what leads to attacks like this one. And it's not just happening on a battlefield, it's happening in how we respond. Are we watching with numbness, with judgment, with detached interest? Or are we searching for what this moment is truly telling us about the world's direction? Leaders rise, but if they lack inner peace, they rule with fear. Nations defend, but if their defense is born from hatred, their protection becomes oppression. People speak, but if their voices echo only pain without truth, they deepen the noise without offering clarity. We can change governments, hold meetings, sign treaties, but if the moral compass of humanity remains broken, the conflict will always find a way to return. Because missiles may leave scars on the land, but it's the wounded morality that leaves the deepest scars on the soul of our world. So, the real war isn't in the headlines, it's not in the airstrikes, it's in the silent war between conscience and corruption. truth and ego, love and power. Until we face that war with honesty and courage, every peace will only be temporary, every ceasefire a pause, not a solution. In a time where breaking news flashes across screens within seconds, and videos of destruction circulate within minutes, we should be more emotionally connected than ever, but instead we're growing numb. Desensitized, overloaded, we scroll through tragedy like it's background noise, and the pain of nations becomes just another update we swipe past. This is not because we are cold-hearted, but because the human heart was never built to carry the weight of the entire world every single day. Emotional numbness isn't weakness. It's a warning signal that something is deeply wrong with how we are processing our reality. When Israel attacked Iran, the world should have paused, reflected, and mourned together. But for many, it was just a headline, a moment of curiosity, or a spark for political debate. We've started to consume trauma the same way we consume entertainment. We watch bombings like we watch movies, shocked but distant. And it's not entirely our fault. We've been exposed to so much suffering, violence, and fear that our systems have begun to shut down to protect us from feeling too much. But this emotional shutdown comes with a cost. The more we stop feeling, the more we stop caring. The more we stop caring, the more easily we justify inaction. And when enough people become numb, the world becomes a place where evil can thrive without resistance. That's why emotional numbness is not just a personal issue. It's a collective danger, because if we can't feel, we won't speak up. If we can't empathize, we won't intervene. And if we can't cry for another's loss, we won't value their life the way we should. In this age of constant connectivity, awareness has become shallow. People repost images of war-torn cities not out of deep conviction, but because it's trending. We've started to confuse visibility with impact. Just because something is seen doesn't mean it's felt. Just because it's shared doesn't mean it's understood. Emotional numbness has turned empathy into performance and global crises into content. This is one of the most dangerous shifts in our collective psyche. This emotional detachment affects how we view ourselves too. We are becoming emotionally reactive, but not emotionally grounded. We feel anger, rage, panic, but not depth. We react to surface-level information without truly processing the pain beneath it. We form opinions faster than we form understanding. The Israel-Iran conflict is not just about military decisions or government strategies. It's about people, innocent people, families, children, dreams destroyed in seconds. But when we lose our emotional connection to humanity, we stop seeing faces and start seeing flags, ideologies, targets. What makes it worse is the pressure to always have an opinion, to always respond, to always post. And in that rush, we bypass the most essential step, feeling. Before we debate, we need to feel. Before we choose sides, we need to feel. Before we act, we need to feel. Because when we stop feeling, we stop being human. And when humanity shuts down emotionally, history shows us the consequences are catastrophic. Our numbness is also making us passive. We assume someone else will care, someone else will speak, someone else will act. But what if no one does? What if the silence we choose today becomes the norm tomorrow? The weight of that silence is what allows tragedy to repeat itself over and over again. When we turn away because we feel overwhelmed, when we shut down because the pain feels too big, we unintentionally become part of the problem. This isn't about politics, it's about presence. It's about choosing to stay emotionally awake even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's painful. Because staying numb might protect us temporarily, but it disconnects us permanently from the truth, from each other, from the urgency of the moment. Every time a war breaks out, we hear the same phrases repeated: calls for peace, cries for justice, demands for ceasefire. But real peace has never been just the absence of bombs or the silence of guns. Real peace is far deeper than that. It's not about what's missing on the surface, but about what's present in the foundation. True peace requires leadership, not political leadership, not military strategy, but spiritual, moral, and emotional leadership, the kind that dares to guide hearts, not just armies, What we often witness in times of war is a vacuum of this kind of leadership. We see people in power making decisions not from a place of wisdom, but from pride, revenge, fear, or legacy building, and when leaders operate from ego, nations suffer. Leaders who lack inner peace cannot create external peace. They may control territories, influence policies, and negotiate treaties, but none of that leads to sustainable harmony if their minds are at war within themselves. The world doesn't just need diplomats, it needs visionaries with depth, patience, and compassion. The conflict between Israel and Iran is a clear example of what happens when leadership becomes reactive instead of reflective. We are watching a chain of events that have been decades in the making, fueled by unresolved history, unhealed trauma, and a failure to listen. These aren't new tensions, they are recycled pain wearing new faces, and at every point where peace could have taken root, weak leadership chose the shortcut of dominance over dialogue. We've been conditioned to believe that strength is shown through retaliation, through building weapons, through strategic strikes, but strength without direction becomes chaos, power without principles becomes destruction. A leader who cannot see beyond the immediate win becomes a danger to the generations that follow, and this is why every war ultimately becomes a question of leadership, not just in government buildings or military rooms, but in the hearts of people. Because leadership isn't a title, it's an energy, it's a mindset, it's the courage to guide instead of manipulate, to protect instead of provoke. Look at the people on both sides, families, youth, communities that want nothing more than a future without fear. They don't need more promises, they need leadership that dares to break cycles, leadership that refuses to inherit old hatreds and instead chooses to birth new hope. But that kind of leadership is rare because it requires sacrifice. It requires standing alone in a room full of warmongers and choosing peace anyway. It requires putting human life above political gain. When peace is not anchored in leadership, it becomes fragile. It becomes dependent on circumstances. The moment something triggers fear, the peace shatters. That's because there was no real healing, no real growth, no real leadership behind it. True leadership asks hard questions. What are we protecting? Who are we becoming? What legacy are we leaving? It doesn't just think about elections or treaties. It thinks about the emotional and spiritual health of a people. And this applies to all of us, not just world leaders. We each carry influence. We lead in our homes, our communities, our conversations. Every time we choose to respond with empathy instead of hate, we lead. Every time we speak truth instead of spreading fear, we lead. Every time we try to understand instead of accuse, we lead. And in a world that is spiraling into deeper chaos, that kind of leadership is revolutionary. Peace isn't passive. It's not just waiting for things to calm down. Peace is a decision, and it needs bold people to build it, to protect it, to lead it. Without real leadership, even the most well-written peace agreement will collapse under the weight of unresolved pain and recycled anger. The world is moving at a pace we can barely keep up with. Technology is advancing, economies are shifting, alliances are breaking and forming again in the blink of an eye. But with all of this movement, very few are asking the deeper question, who is shaping the direction we're going in? Because the truth is, if we don't shape the future with awareness, fear will shape it for us. And fear doesn't build, fear reacts. Fear doesn't think about what's right. It only tries to survive. That's what makes it so dangerous when fear becomes the dominant force behind national decisions, public opinion, and human behavior. When Israel attacked Iran, it wasn't just a military decision. It was also a reflection of what fear does when it's left unchecked. Fear of being attacked, fear of losing control, fear of appearing weak. And when fear drives action, it doesn't ask questions, it doesn't seek understanding. It strikes, it protects without considering the cost. It speaks without thinking about the echo. And when entire nations operate from this place, the result is chaos dressed as strategy. We are not just witnessing global conflict, we're witnessing a world being shaped by unconscious reactions, by unresolved fear that has been allowed to grow louder than wisdom. But awareness is different. Awareness doesn't just react. It observes, it asks questions, it slows down, it seeks clarity. A world shaped by awareness looks for patterns, for lessons, for deeper truths beneath the surface. Awareness understands that not every threat requires attack, and not every disagreement needs to become war. It understands that real strength comes from knowing what you're defending and why, not just swinging because you can. And yet, awareness is often pushed aside because it takes time, it requires effort, and it demands emotional intelligence. In a world addicted to quick responses, awareness feels too slow, too soft. Fear is loud. It shouts through media, it spreads through rumors, it multiplies through assumptions, and it thrives in silence. The more unaware we are, the more power fear gains. When people don't know the truth, they become vulnerable to manipulation. When leaders don't operate from awareness, they fall into the same patterns of violence and division that history has already shown us. And when societies don't value awareness, they applaud destruction as strength and confuse temporary control with long-term peace. To shape the future with awareness, we must become deeply intentional. We must teach ourselves to pause, to look past headlines and ask what's really happening beneath them. We must question the motivations behind decisions, the narratives we are fed, and the beliefs we carry. Awareness begins with honesty about our own fears, our biases, our wounds. Because if we're not honest with ourselves, we'll project those fears onto the world and create exactly what we were trying to avoid. What's at stake isn't just one country's fate or another's security. What's at stake is the entire trajectory of our world. Are we building a future where decisions are made through wisdom or through fear masked as strategy? Are we raising a generation that thinks critically, feels deeply, and acts wisely? Or are we raising a generation that simply follows the noise? These are the questions awareness forces us to ask, and the ones fear desperately tries to drown out. In moments of global crisis, like this one between Israel and Iran, fear will always try to take center stage. It will scream louder, move faster, and push harder, but awareness must be chosen again and again. It must be cultivated in conversations, in education, in leadership, in the media, and most of all, in our own personal lives. Because if we don't choose awareness, we don't just lose control of the narrative, we hand it over to fear. And fear, once empowered, doesn't just shape the future, it distorts it.